Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I am your host, Whitney Clark, and today we are in for a treat because we're joined by an author whose work we have been lucky enough to enjoy for years. We're joined by Jennifer Weiner. She's here to talk about her new book, The Griffin Sisters' Greatest Hits. She's a New York Times bestselling author with more than 11 million copies in print. Most recently, her novels include The Breakaway and The Summer Place, and she's out with a new book. Her books are known for diving into really complex female friendships, body image issues, and so much more. Jennifer has also written essays for the New York Times and has appeared on many national programs. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, so great to chat with you. Tell us about your new book and what readers can expect.
All right, so the Griffin Sisters' Greatest Hits is set in two timelines. In the early aughts, we're going to meet the Griffin sisters, who are top of the pops in the era of Britney and Christina and Jessica Simpson. And then we're going to be in the present day where it's all those years later, the band imploded and nobody really knows why. One of the Griffin sisters is a housewife in Haddonfield, New Jersey. The other one has gone off the grid in Alaska. And there's this young woman who is one sister's daughter, the other one's niece, who wants to be a pop star too, but on her own terms. But more than that, she wants to solve the mystery of what happened to the band. So that is the Griffin Sisters' Greatest Hits.
I love a dual timeline as well, especially
Yes.
something set in the early 2000s. For so many of us, I mean, that was when I grew up. I remember the music so well. What in the early 2000s was really happening that was important for you to include? Like, how were pop stars treated at the time? What are some of the things the Griffin sisters are dealing with?
So the early 2000s was a really, really interesting moment in music for women because on the one hand, you had singer-songwriters like Alanis Morissette, who were out there kind of defying traditional beauty standards in some ways, kind of speaking truth to power, being kind of raw and vulnerable and sexual in a way that we hadn't always seen women being. And then you have these kind of pop princesses, your Britneys, your Christinas, who were, they had sort of been packaged differently, which is not to say that they did not have songs that spoke to people in the same kinds of ways, but there were these two different kinds of female musicians that you were seeing enjoying a lot of success, right? And then you had this sort of pop culture that had a lot to say about policing the boundaries, really, of women's bodies, of women's sexualities. I mean, interviews with Britney Spears about, are you still a virgin? And I do not remember anybody asking Justin Timberlake about any of that. It was really, you know, looking back, I mean, because that's what you do when you're writing a novel. You go and you like read all the old People magazines and all the old Us Weeklies. And I was reading this thing and I'm thinking, I don't remember it being like quite this terrible, you know? And then I'm like, well, of course not. Like I was consuming this stuff just like everybody else. Like I was like calling my friends on my flip phone, like, did you see what Britney just did? And like, oh my God, what's up with her? And it's gosh, you don't know what you don't know. And I
Absolutely.
really, yes. And I wanted to talk about all of that stuff. I wanted to talk about pop culture, bodies, sexuality, the packaging of women for public consumption, all those things.
Going back and watching some of the interviews that Britney Spears did in particular, and it's not like they were just some random interviews with a magazine or newspaper. I mean, it was like the major networks on the Today Show, on some of these shows. I can't believe the questions she was asked, and some of these young girls were asked. Do you think that as a society, we've made progress in terms of how young women in the limelight are treated?
Oh boy, I would like to think that we have, but I mean, some of the stuff that, like Millie Bobby Brown puts up with these days, like, or Selena Gomez, it's like if you show up with your body looking different, well, everybody's got an opinion on that, and everyone has, questions or comments, or she looked better before, or no, she looks better now. She was this before, and now she's that. It's like, it's crazy. And I think that I honestly do not know what we can do to stop this other than like being aware of when we're doing it ourselves and calling it out when we see it, right? Like women's bodies are not like the metric of who they are, and they're not there really for us to like judge or talk about. But, cue the entire Wicked press tour, right?
Yeah, definitely. And for Cassie, that is something she deals with a lot in this book.
Yeah.
Kind of tell us about what Cassie deals with when it comes to her
Yes.
body image and being in the limelight.
So there's two Griffin sisters. There's Cassie and there's Zoe. So she's a musical prodigy. She's incredibly talented. She has the most beautiful singing voice. She can like sit down and play anything at the piano, but she is living in a larger body and she is extremely socially awkward in a way that would probably have gotten her a diagnosis had she been born 10 years or 20 years later. Um, she does not want to be famous, but her sister Zoe, who is far more beautiful and a lot less talented, wants nothing more than to be a pop star. So she sort of pulls Cassie into this world, pushes her on stage at an open mic night, and then, they through connections, like somebody knows somebody who hears them, brings them to a record label, and they are just off to the races. So Cassie does not want people looking at her, does not want people judging her, does not want to be on stage at all until she discovers this interesting thing, which is when you're on stage and those bright lights are shining in your eyes, you can't see the audience. You can't see anything out there. So being on stage for her is almost a way to hide. It's a way to pretend there's no one looking, there's no one there. And when she's sort of moving through the world, she's very happy to let Zoe be the face of the band, and she can sort of just like fade back into the scrum a little bit. But when I was writing this book, I was thinking about Wilson Phillips a lot. And I was thinking about Carney Wilson and the Hold On video and, just the way that whoever was in charge of that band felt the need to hide Carney Wilson, like put her in pantsuits on the beach or like only show her from the neck up or like do these quick cutaways and then oh, now we're looking at China Phillips again, thank God, as if our eyes would start to burn if we saw like a woman who was bigger than a size two. I wanted to write this book almost as an act of reclamation, of a way of taking Mama Cass and Carney Wilson, all of the women who got sort of pushed to the side or put in the background, and letting them have their moment on stage.
Why is it important for you to also portray often complex sister relationships? Because
Mm.
Cassie and Zoe certainly have what is a complex relationship.
Yes, yes. Well, okay. So sisters are friends on steroids, right? And we've
Yeah.
all had friendships where there's a lot of love and a lot of respect, but sometimes there are other things as well. There's envy or there's comparison or in high school, I dated one of my best friend's older brothers, which completely like blew up the friendship. And sisters, I mean, it doesn't get more complicated than that, but it also doesn't get more rewarding in some ways. Like, I have two daughters, and I remember my mom saying to me when my younger daughter was born and then starting to grow up and starting to become who she is. And my mom would always say, like, Lucy, my older daughter, she will never have a better friend than Phoebe. And Phoebe will be her best friend her whole life. And like that's been true. And they're sisters, so they squabble and they've definitely got their stuff with each other. But just knowing that they are going to love each other after I'm gone, probably just, given the way time works. I think that's something that's really rich and rewarding and worth exploring in a novel.
Mhm. And it is really special. I mean, I have a sister who's younger than me, and your siblings are your first friends in life,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
hopefully your friends for life. How much of, you're a mother, how much of your life kind of seeps into these books?
I have to be a little careful now that I have daughters who can like read my books and
Yeah.
start recognizing themselves. I mean, the truth of fiction, though, is like usually there's like a kernel of truth there. Something you did, something you said, something you heard, and then you will make it funnier or sadder or darker or weirder. You'll do something to it, and then it's fiction and it's not real life anymore. That being said, having these two girls in my house, it definitely gave me a lot of material, a lot of inspiration.
Well, we were teenage girls at one point, so we know,
Mhm.
kind of what that's like and how difficult that can be. Let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about Cherry. Is that how you're pronouncing her name in the book,
Yep,
Cherry? Let's talk a
yep,
little
yep,
about
yep.
Zoe's daughter and
Yes.
kind of how she's learning about her mom and sort of what she's up against, decades
Mhm.
after her mom was in the music industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I the last two books I've written, I've had mothers kind of do unkind things to their daughters, right? In The Breakaway, there's kind of this almond mom who just keeps putting her daughter on diets and sending her daughter to fat camp and wanting her daughter to be smaller. And in the Griffin Sisters' Greatest Hits, Zoe does not want Cherry to be a musician, does everything she can to like steer her away from it, doesn't want her taking music lessons, won't bring her to like the open audition that Disney is having at the Cherry Hill Mall, like just throws obstacles in her way every moment that she can do that. And there's a moment in both of those books where the daughters kind of confront their moms and are like, why were you so awful? Why couldn't you see who I wanted to be or what was going to make me happy? And in both cases, the mothers sort of answer, I wanted to keep you safe, right? Zoe has been through the meat grinder of pop stardom for young women in the early aughts. Like she's had a record label executive put his arm around her and kind of pinch her middle and be like, oh, keep an eye on that. And like have a Stairmaster delivered to her hotel room. She's been sexually assaulted, which that was a thing that happened, and it wasn't always called out or named for what it was. But she's been violated and harmed in all of the ways that when you read Brittany's memoir, when you read Jessica Simpson's memoir, you realize that those young women were harmed. Zoe's endured all of that. And so when she looks at Cherry, she is just like, no, not for you, not letting it happen, not gonna make this possible. And she's doing it for all of the right reasons. But of course, it turns out it's the wrong thing to do. Like, instead of building fences around her daughters, what she needs to do is like burn down this industry that was so terrible to her and then remake it better. But
Mm-hmm.
she can't see that yet. Hmm.
Yeah. Do you have an instance in your life where you look back and you're like, you know what? My mom was right about that. When I was a teenager, I was mad about something. And my mom, maybe time is what you needed to realize, like, hey, maybe your mom actually was right when you were in high school.
Oh my God. So when I was like 16, 17, I was dating a guy who was in his 20s and out of college, right? And I was like, well, I'm smart. I'm advanced for my age. I'm very mature. I can do this. And my mom was like, no, not happening. And I was furious. And I was like, oh, you don't understand how special I am. And, you know, I think in retrospect, I can understand where she was coming from a little more.
Mhm.
Um, but it was a different time. And I think, you know, it's easy to look back and judge and, wish we'd done better or wish we'd understood more. But like you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know it until you get there and you've lived a little and you've like gotten some wisdom.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think my mom, in retrospect, was actually quite wise about a number of things.
Do you see yourself in either of these characters, Zoe or Cassie, or I mean, even Cherry?
I mean, I see myself in all of my characters. They all have to have a little bit of my DNA. I mean, obviously, Cassie, I was describing her to a friend a couple days ago, and I'm like, so she's like big and she's awkward and she can't really understand people and she's like talented, but she really doesn't belong in the world. And my friend is like, okay, so she's you. And I'm like, no. And then I'm like, maybe. So, Cassie, like, there's always kind of a me character, or a lot of times there's like a me character in my books. But, with Zoe, she's a mom and she has this daughter and she wants to keep her daughter safe. She doesn't want the world to hurt her daughter. And as a mother, like, it's just so interesting. It's like if you hurt me, like I'll be hurt and I'll be angry, but I'll probably get over it. If you hurt my kid, like I will never forget. I will never forget. And I will probably hold that against you for the rest of your days. Even if you don't know, then I know. So that I think I gave my like mama bearness to Zoe. And then with Cherry, like Cherry is fearless. Like Cherry will fly to Alaska and just start putting flyers up like, have you seen this woman? And I think like she's brave in a way that I can remember being not all the time, but like intermittently in my teens and 20s when there was something I wanted and something I felt strongly about, like I could kind of shove down whatever fear I felt and just go get it. And looking back, I'm like, that was pretty cool. So yeah, there's a little of me in all three of the Griffin ladies.
And speaking of Cherry, she's part of a sort of a talent show.
Mhm.
And you sort of mentioned this at the top of the hour when we talked about some of the pop stars back in the early 2000s. What kind of research went into this in terms of the industry and how some of these shows work now versus how maybe they used to work and how the industry was years ago?
Right. So, I mean, I did a lot of, I don't think the general mechanics of how reality shows find their people has changed all that much. Social media has changed a part of it. Like, it used to be in the early days of American Idol, you would just be like the most talented kid in your high school and you'd show up to audition. And now it's like you might show up with like 100,000 followers on TikTok and like following your SoundCloud or whatever. But I was lucky enough to talk to Diana DeGarmo, who was one of the early contestants from American Idol. And she walked me through like the entire process, including the fact that you can't change your clothes. Like they shoot those auditions over like 2 days or 3 days, like, but they want to make it look as though it's all happening in one day. So you've got to wear the same clothes every day you show up for this thing, which I was so interested in. I'm like, did you wash them or what? Like what was going on? And she's like, yeah, my family was with me and we had an apartment and like I was able to like wash my little outfit.
Wow.
Yes, but that's the kind of detail that like once you have it, you're like, that is going in the book. That's fascinating.
That
Um,
that
right?
name, Diana DeGarmo, like unlocked something in my brain I forgot was
Uh-huh.
there because I remember
Uh-huh.
her. I remember her
Uh-huh.
name, and
Yeah.
the early days of American Idol were
Yeah,
like
no,
it was
she
huge.
made it pretty far and she ended up like doing a lot of Broadway work, which I think was, given her voice was maybe where she was headed anyhow. Um, but I talked to her and then I have a sister-in-law who works for one of the big record labels in LA and she told me about the process of like in the early aughts trying to break musicians out when terrestrial radio was how you did that. And she would take these new artists on tours from like radio station to radio station to radio station. Basically, they'd play little tiny desk concerts and then they would just, schmooze with the production people and the DJs and then like get back in the car, drive to the next radio station, do the next thing. Um, all like just not glamorous at all, like the opposite of glamour. Like you're staying in like really inexpensive hotels and you get like your per diem for food and you're just trying to, the record label isn't going to invest a ton of money in you until they believe that they're going to get a return on that investment.
Hmm.
So lots of good details from her.
Talk a little bit about the other band members because there are
Mm.
the other band members, one in particular who plays obviously a very big role in this, and
Mhm.
it's sort of a mystery throughout a lot of the book as to what happened,
Right.
and then this man's role as well.
Okay, so the Griffin sisters, we've got Cassie and we've got Zoe, and the record label realizes pretty quickly that they have something special with them. And then it's like, okay, we've got to get you a hit. And so they assign them basically like the hot young songwriter of the moment, which is what happens. A record label will find somebody with an incredible voice and they will put this person together with songwriters and with producers and try to like make magic happen. So the Griffin sisters are introduced to this young man named Russell D'Angelo, who's a little bit older than they are, who's already been through like the rise and fall of one band and is now sort of reinventing himself as a like behind the scenes guy, but ends up joining the band. Ends up sort of having feelings for not one, but both of the Griffin sisters. And then there's this guy, Tommy, who is the percussionist, the drummer who Cassie had been in music school back in Philadelphia with. And then this guy named Cam, who the label just kind of brings on board. And he's this kind of like surfer dude, pothead, like does yoga back bends before all the shows. Um, I watched a lot of music documentaries and the Alanis Morissette documentary on HBO, highly recommend just for like the fashion for one thing. Like, man, those like low-rise flared jeans that we all
Mhm.
wore and the little belly shirts and the oh my God. But yes, but just the rituals of like watching the guys doing handstands before they went on stage. But yeah, I had a lot of fun like filling out the band and just, thinking back to like all of the great musical love triangles in history, particularly in Fleetwood Mac. That was fun.
Yeah, and I don't know if how often you're on TikTok and social media, but the Fleetwood Mac, Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Nicks, there's been a lot of videos that have come out and performances
Mhm.
that have recirculated that now people are like learning all about those two. I'm thinking, I
Uh-huh.
can't remember the year, but there was a performance where she was singing the song she wrote about him like directly to him. And
Yes.
I swear that must have like caused the song to like be on the go up on the charts
Yes,
again.
right. And was it in a movie too, maybe? But yes, I know exactly the performance that you're talking about, and where everybody's like, look at him looking at her, right?
Yes. And
Hmm.
she's singing to him. So
Yes.
Russell sees something in Cassie that she doesn't see in herself and
Hmm.
her talent. What do you hope young women will take away from this if maybe they're also like Cassie and don't see how great they are and all of the wonderful things that they bring to the world?
Oh boy. I mean, I started writing this book, I want to say, at the very beginning of like the age of Ozempic, where it seemed like every famous person was suddenly magically much smaller. And some of them are like, I'm on a GLP-1 drug, and some of them are like, I'm just drinking lots of water. I'm like, no, you're not. No one can drink that much water. But I feel like, I mean, culture is always a pendulum, right? It's always either swinging one way or swinging back. So I feel like we had this moment of like body positivity, body neutrality, body acceptance, whatever you want to call it, where like we had Lizzo and we had people talking about like maybe we should be seeing models on the runway that aren't all sample sizes. And it felt like there was like a moment where things were changing. And then, of course, whoop, the pendulum swings back. And now everyone is skinny. And I feel like the messaging got very confusing because, to go from everybody can be strong and healthy and worthy to nope, everybody should look like this. If I was a teenage girl, I would be so whiplashed right now. And if there's a message in the Griffin sisters, and I know this is probably going to sound very trite and very obvious, but I will say it anyhow, it's that your weight your size, the number on the scale is the least interesting thing about you and the least important or essential to who you will become and the gifts that you have and the things that you will leave to the world. Like, no one is going to be like in somebody's obituary who wrote beautiful music or who raised a wonderful family or who was a teacher for 40 years and like educated generations of kids. No one is going to say, Mary Smith died, at age whatever after a long illness. She wore a size 2 all of her adult life.
Yeah, it's
That's
so
not the
true.
lead. Like, I guarantee you that is not the lead. And nobody's on their deathbed thinking, oh, if only I had done 30 more minutes on the Stairmaster. Like, it just doesn't work that way. So, we all have gifts. We all have things we're meant to be doing, things we're supposed to be leaving to the world. And I don't think that for women, making yourself smaller is first among them.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I think it's even harder now with social media. I mean, I am so thankful that I didn't grow up with social media when I was in high school. I mean, it's
Right?
you have Instagram, you have TikTok, you have Snapchat. I mean, it's just overwhelming, I can imagine, for 14 girls and teen parents. And how do you navigate that as a parent yourself of teen girls?
It's so hard because like you can't say no. Like, if you're the one parent who's like not letting their kid have a smartphone, you shouldn't delude yourself into thinking that means they're not seeing any of this stuff. They're seeing it. They're just seeing it on someone else's phone or like on the school computer at the library or like whatever. Like, you can't keep it out. So I think what you have to try to do is like be an example of whatever behaviors and values you want to model. And the other thing that I have learned is that kids will ignore what you say, they will not ignore what you do, right? So if you are a mother telling your daughters you are lovely and worthy and beautiful at any size, while you are starving yourself and judging yourself and like putting on shapewear on top of your shapewear and saying things like, I was so naughty last night, I have to
Oh
do
yeah.
another 20 minutes on the treadmill. Like, that's what they're seeing and that's what they're taking in. And so, like, I had to really, like, when I became a mother, I had to really, really think about it, like, consciously, like, there's not going to be any body talk in front of this girl. Like,
Mhm.
I want her to grow up without that in her ears, at least in her house. I want her home to be a safe place where she can just like be a person and not a body. But it's hard. I mean, I am not going to tell you that it's easy. And I do think that, I mean, I'm very grateful there was no social media when I was growing up as a teenager. And I really do wonder what will happen to this generation of girls between like the COVID piece of it
Mhm.
and the social media piece of it, like losing a year of socialization and then just like seeing all of this stuff where it's just like comparison, comparison, comparison. And here's what I eat in a day, and here's my outfit of the day, and here's my workout of the day, and here's how you can be like me, and here's what you should buy to be like me. And I guess that's the other piece of it. Like, if you can always remember to ask yourself, who is making money from giving me this message or making me feel this way? Who is profiting from making me think, is it a drug manufacturer? Is it somebody that's trying to sell me, a gym membership or like flat tummy tea, or a celebrity who like wants me to watch her? Like, who's profiting? And then think, like, do I want to give this person my money, my time, my attention? Like, is there something better I could do?
Sort of speaking of social media, you do use your social media in a positive way, and that's to amplify, other women's sort of voices. Why is that so important for you in this day and age?
Yeah, I mean, I do, you know, there's a lot that's of damage that social media does, but it's a tool, right? And you can use tools to tear down and you can use tools to build up. And so for me, it's always been important to sort of think about women's voices, women's work, the way women are consumed in society by the culture, by the world, and to sort of, you know, hold that up for examination. Like, we talk about women's fiction, but there is no men's fiction. What's up with that? Is that
Yes.
fair? Is that right? Why can't fiction just be fiction? You know, like, or when I was starting out, there was chick lit. There was no male analog. There was not dick lit. Like books about young men coming of age and dealing with sort of workplace drama and romantic drama. Those were books. They were not labeled. They were just books. Like, and that really struck me as not particularly fair. And so I talked about it, and
Yeah.
social media let me talk about it.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you about the term chick lit and also just about, like the romance genre. I mean, I feel
Mhm.
like I always have an issue because I think people tend to look down on those types of books like they're just fluff or they there's no real message or meaning there. I mean, I think the challenge is like those people clearly haven't read any of those books as of late because that's clearly changed. And
Yes.
the Washington Post had once said about you that you made a major career out of writing engrossing popular novels that take women seriously. Do you
Mhm.
think that we're doing better in terms of taking women seriously when it comes to books of all genres?
So there's two things going on. I think there are the women and the girls who are reading those books and seeing themselves and seeing their own issues, their own dilemmas, their own feelings sort of taken seriously on the page. And then there are critics, and then there's the culture, and then there are the people who are just like, ugh, romantasy. It's just dragons having sex or like whatever. You know, the culture is always going to want to judge and to put down, I think, stuff that is consumed by women and by young women, especially, and call it fluff and call it stupid, call it meaningless, call it trivial, unimportant. Um, the women who are reading it know differently. I think that they are reading these books because there's something in them that speaks to them. And, even if you are not, the girl who's going to like join the fourth wing and get a dragon and save the world, like, I think some of the things that character is feeling in terms of her uncertainty and like being attracted to like the wrong guy and having a mother who maybe doesn't love her as much as her sister, girls go through that stuff. And I think that it feels familiar to them. And I think that they feel themselves seen and validated by those stories. Now, do I wish that the culture as a whole was a little less dismissive about women's work? Absolutely. And that's been something I've tried to always talk about, and I take my own work seriously, which I do think is a big part of the battle.
Speaking of women's work, do you have any authors who you really love? Like, do you have any authors who you're like, if this person's writing a book, I'm absolutely going to read it?
Oh my God, so many. So many. How much time do you have? So Susan Isaacs is one of my absolute favorite writers. She was somebody I grew up reading, and if she has a new book out, I will buy it. Speaking of romance, Rachel Reed, who writes hockey romance,
Mhm.
and Serena Bowen, who also writes male-male romance, male-female romance. Either of those ladies, that's an auto buy for me. Let's see, Miranda July, who wrote
Oh,
All Fours, which I think every woman my
oh,
age, we all
yes.
just got copies in our mailboxes or something, and all of us read it and have like a hot take on what was going on in that book. There was a book called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Philyaw. It was a debut short story collection about Black women in the church, sort of dealing with like sexuality and with men and family and judgment and deciding who they were going to be in a world that didn't always want to let them be who they were going to be. She has a first novel, I believe, coming out soon, and like I will run, not walk, to my bookstore to get that.
I also loved All Fours. I'll have to check out the other
Mhm.
ones, but
Mhm.
and I think the reason why I loved it and why so many other women resonated with it is because it's becoming more common now, but it used to be very few and far between that there would be the main character of a novel be middle-aged or
Right,
over the age of 40. Or
right.
I recently read a book, The Stolen Queen, where she was in her 60s, which was
Yes.
amazing to see because obviously life doesn't end after the age of 25.
Right. But if you watch TV and movies, you'd probably think so, right? It's like the
Absolutely.
three ages of women are like ingenue, district attorney, and driving Miss Daisy.
Yes,
And that's
absolutely.
not true.
Is there anything else you want readers to know about the Griffin sisters and your new book?
So I would say the Griffin sisters' greatest hits, like come for the glitz and the glam and the expose and the chance to revisit the era of like Paris Hilton's sex tape and Lindsay Lohan like flashing the paparazzi coming out of the limo, and Britney Spears and Jessica Simpson and Christina Aguilera and the toxic video. Like, come for all of that. Stay for the stuff about sisters and mothers and daughters and how fame hurts women and how it used to be, how it is, and how all of us can sort of think about making it better and leaving things a little better than we found them for the women who will come next.
I love that. I love that. And we all can play a part
Yeah,
in that, which I love. So thank you so much.
you're
Oh my
very
goodness.
welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us.